Hey everyone, welcome to Founders 365 with me, Steven Haggerty. Today I'm joined by Anthony Rose, who is the co-founder of SeedLegals. How are you today, Anthony?
Hey, very well, thank you.
Thank you for being on and thanks for your time. I know you're a very busy guy, but let's just start this conversation off. For those that haven't heard of SeedLegals, which I'm sure is very few, what is it that you guys do and what is it you offer?
So we are the one-stop platform to build your business, raise investment, build your team. So instead of going to a law firm, this 24/7 always on platform to do all the legals for funding round, hiring people, cap table, the works. And my goal is that I like to think, what would a law firm do, and then do everything completely the opposite.
I love that approach. Let's go back in time then, because 2016 was when SeedLegal was co-founded. You guys have achieved a lot in a very short space of time. But I want to skip before it was co-founded. What was going on in your world that you saw this problem and you thought, yeah, I can help fix this. I can help solve this.
So, after I left the BBC doing iPlayer, I built a startup, sold it, built a startup, sold it, invested in a few, didn't really think too much about the process. And then I invested in three delightful students who are doing a social network for a university. They sent one of them, I was trying to hire previously as an iOS developer who was still at uni. He sent me his pitch deck and said, give me your thoughts on the pitch deck. And I went, pitch deck's a bit mad, but I love the idea. I tell you what, I'll save you a lot of trouble. I'll invest. So then I thought, well, obviously we need to do proper deal docs, but there's no way I'm paying anyone for it. So I kind of nicked the docs from my last company and beat them into shape. I thought that they would be totally bored by the whole process. But I thought I couldn't be judge, jury, and executioner, as the investors and as the legal guy. So I would explain it to them. And I was amazed to see that they were hugely interested. And I was also pleasantly surprised to find that I thought I was actually quite good at explaining all the deal points. And then I was also slightly disappointed to find there's a lot of stuff I really didn't know. So there's a lot of frantic Googling. But the idea was kind of born that can there be some other way of doing this? And then again, I thought no more about it. And then I met my business partner, Laurent Laffy, genius, ex-VC and serial angel investor. We met at a party, and he was explaining that funding rounds take forever. Lawyers charge a fortune. They make mistakes, which for him the human mistake element was the biggest problem,
Oh, really?
and he wanted to change that. And we thought, interesting. We should think about this further. So we got together and actually did something about it.
I love that. And like I said, your growth has been incredible, really, considering, like we said, no one was doing anything like this before. It was a very traditional, and it still is a very traditional industry, the legal sector. How was it coming up against those more traditional way of thinking? Because listen, your solution is easier at the end of the day, saves people money, saves people time, and your whole message of Seed Legals is very connected to that entrepreneurial spirit, that entrepreneurial mindset. How was those initial first couple of months, first maybe couple of years, when obviously you were trying to get people on the system and get it used?
Well, it's a great question. So I think, in any startup, you've got a few key problems to solve, which will vary by team and startup. So sometimes it's, can you build it? Maybe it's technically very complicated. Or can you ever get funding for it? Or can you build a team? Or do you have any experience? Or can you get people to want it? And what I found is, I mean, between Laurent and myself, my business partner, we could fund it ourselves. We're pretty sure startups wanted it. Between me as a startup and as Laurent as the investor, we're pretty sure we knew we could build it. It was going to be hard work, and we knew we could build a team. The key problem I had, or we had, was maybe investors would just hate it. They go, no, no, you have to go to a lawyer, or maybe each deal was going to be so customized that the platform would never be able to deal with any given round. So like any MVP, you obviously you want to get something out the door before you've built everything. That's the whole goal of startups. But of course, you can't really go MVP on someone's legals. Yeah, this one's probably going to be
This is
okay.
the test, you know.
That's right. Yours, if it folds, give us a call. Let us know it didn't work. But so what we had is we have we had the Swan gliding smoothly across the water, but underneath frantic paddling. So that was our chief legal officer. The website was collecting the information, and behind it, we were busy, in Word,
No
busy
pressure.
busy
No
building
pressure
it.
at all.
Going, she's going, this is going to kill me. Can you please automate this before I die? So. But then what we found is not only did investors accept it, but they loved it. People started calling us going, hey, I invested in this company. I was amazed. The founders' deal docs were great. They knew what they were talking about. What was the muse that was whistling in their ear, telling them what to do? So we saw that worked. But now I think are the key learnings, which were, I think when we started, my assumption is people are looking for legals.
Mm-hmm.
But actually, nobody's looking for legals. You never wake up in the morning going, I'm looking for a legal document. What you're looking for, and it sounds a bit trite, but you're looking for a solution. So my goal, if you go to a law firm, they'll probably tell you the 12 things you could do with the big risk analysis on that. That doesn't help you at all. My goal is to essentially recognize what most people are doing, essentially use data to show you what you probably want to do. And then my goal is to actually give you the solution and give it to you in a sort of plain English way. That's thing number one. Thing number two, I think often people don't really know what's possible. So sometimes you think, I need a term sheet for a funding round, but generally there's a sort of dark pit of stuff you need to do. And so if you can just show people these are the things you need to do, because it turns out that every founder is different and every idea is different, but most funding rounds are remarkably self-similar.
Yeah.
Or every time you hire an employee, there's always like 8 things that are standard. You're going to work probably in our office, maybe not these days, sometimes at home. Paid this amount, you might get some stock options, share options. These are your holiday days. So if I can just show you what you probably want, show you what's standard, give you data, the entire problem space is transformed. And then I think the last thing, which I realized, ultimately it's all about empowerment. And it's not just my business, it's any business. And I think when I look at someone's website, whether it's paying your electricity in a new way instead of wandering around to, the basement and looking in the dark, and a meter is some, anything that empowers you, that, on demand, on your browser, in the middle of the night, you can accomplish the task you want. That will be, I think, the winner in the future.
Yeah, I completely agree. In those early days, or again, maybe in the first couple of years, looking back now, what were some of those proudest moments? Obviously, a new business, even though you've had multiple experiences of both sides of the field. But what were some of those proudest moments for you within SeedLegals in those early days?
I think probably the first one was completing our own funding round on SeedLegals. So I must admit, we took forever to close our first round. We were way slower than anyone else. And the reason is
Always the way.
between my business partner and myself, we were insisting we were going to do it on SeedLegals. But then, we wanted everything to be perfect. It would deal with the insanely complicated things we had in mind, and everyone would get beautiful share certificates. So we probably spent about 6 months doing our round because we wanted to be just so.
You
But
became your
afterwards,
own most challenging client.
exactly. Yeah, I think it's called eating your own dog food or something. But so that was great. But I must say, I think for me, it's just a lot of little things on a daily basis that, firstly, building a great team. That's always nice, particularly when, COVID hits and things are not good, that you can say, I've got cash in the bank, I've got cash flow. Team, you've got an assured livelihood. You're not going to be out on the street. That is hugely satisfying because you've lured people from other companies to come and follow you, and you want to be able to deliver on that. And then I think also on a daily basis, just see people doing their funding rounds. Probably the thing I love most is actually, at midnight on a Sunday night with our Slack integration, see someone's, raised 100K using instant investment or something. And that was just not possible before. So there's the founder at home, doing, founders the only time you ever get to do boring stuff like accounting and legals and investment is on a weekend evening. They could just never, close around, do stuff in a way that is now possible. And I think for me, that's the bit that gets me actually most excited.
Yeah, those moments must be so great for you. You mentioned team, and team is something I wanted to talk to you about because I put a couple of questions out there to our founders and community, and one of the things that a couple of them said was that you obviously have built an incredible team, that every touch point that they've had with the company, with anyone in the business, has just been seamless and faultless and really brought with an open line of communication. How did you manage? I mean, it's kind of a trick question, I guess, but how did you manage to build this kind of culture? How did you manage to, like you said, lure people in, even when in those early days and those first couple of employees?
It's a great question. And of course, I don't claim to know the answer, but here's what I try. I try super hard. So, firstly, I think I like to hire people who are sort of self starters. I always joke with people I hire that they're all going to be founders who are going to go and leave and build their own business. Hopefully not too soon, but I love people who just take the initiative. I love people who have a sort of 3D macro worldview of the space. So my business partner, who's a genius at funding rounds, if I asked him something, he wouldn't tell me, as I might know, like rote, do X because Y happens. He'll explain that 3 rounds further on, the following will unfold if you do X. And so you understand the space. And so the next thing is, can I find people who are super smart and help mentor them so that they understand the big picture? So when people call us, they can help. The third thing, and this is my onboarding, so every person who joins the company gets, personal Anthony onboarding session. And there, the first thing I explain is, I think there are 3 levels of customer support. The level 1 is, what would BT do? And you must never ever do that. So BT would probably, it's like it's the sort of turn it off and on again kind of thing.
Yeah.
So they tell you something that's technically accurate and probably doesn't help you at all. Level 2 is where you go and look at that person's particulars in detail. So let's say somebody says, my number of shares isn't adding up. The level 1 would be, check your cap table, make sure the numbers are correct. It's like, assume the person's intelligent, don't do that. Level 2 would be to use the information you can find. So put on your, Hercule Poirot hat and do some sleuthing, look at their company house filings and see what's public there. And then you might go, oh, your nominal value is incorrect, it doesn't match this. And that's level 2. But level 3, which I think you can do better, is to actually fix the problem. So instead of saying to the person, go here and push this button and sort that, you could then go, actually, I've sorted that for you, please check. And by the way, while looking at it, I noticed your free trial expired, so I gave you another 60 days on me. So if you can have in your mind, what would be like the best response? Now, of course, it's easy to think about doing that, but when you've got like 150 or 200 customer interactions a day, across the team, it starts becoming quite busy. So you have to really keep that in mind. But for my part, I try to always impress on the team and in myself. It's all about an awesome customer experience, and I think that's a key differentiator.
Yeah, 100%, and it goes to show that that's worked because, like I said, the feedback that I've had from people that are using your system and using the SeedLegals base as a whole, it's just I've never heard a bad thing about you guys, which
Well,
is
that's very kind, and I
really
guess the
nice to hear
challenge.
as well.
And so thank you. And I guess the challenge is, when you're 5 people, you can talk to everyone and one of them's you.
Mm.
Hopefully it's easier. Now we're 60 people and, in a year's time, it might be double that. Those will be the challenges as you start adding more people and you become a bit more disconnected. And of course now, when everyone's in the office, you can wander around and how's it going? Is there a problem? Can I help with anything? You got a difficult, interesting one? Great, let me hop in. But now it's a bit more difficult
Yeah.
with, people at home. So to
So how
try
have you
and keep
combated
that.
how have you combated that then?
Well, I think what I found is the team largely took to it like ducks to water. I think most of our customer interactions were on Zoom anyway, so that didn't change. I think the 2 hardest things that I perceived, and one of them wasn't hard and the other one is the one I perceived as new joiners, onboarding. How do you bring people to be part of the culture and so on? So typically, when you have someone, they sit with their colleagues and they learn, and how does that work remotely? And actually, it turns out that seems to work quite well. We're all on Slack, Intercom, Zoom sessions and so on. We tag team. So I've been pleasantly surprised. But I think the hardest thing is product development, because normally you want to be in a room and a whiteboard and go, well, how about this? And we draw
Yeah,
that. And
let the
you,
creativity flow.
exactly. And you're trying to sort of reach into your Zoom screen and going, no, move that up. So that I think is the hardest. And it's said that what's missing, in remote working is serendipity. Because when you're with people in the office, the bar for, overhearing something or seeing these people in a meeting room together, or, joining in a conversation or meeting at the coffee machine is you got all these connections. But now you have to create Slack or a Zoom call or something to do it. And I think what will be interesting is, the immediate short-term changes. I think we adapted really quickly. It'll be interesting to see what's like the 1 or 2 year change. Do you find that longer term new things you want to develop just don't happen as much because you start focusing on the here and now and not on the big picture? This I don't know the answer to.
Yeah, I might have a solution for you that I'll talk to you afterwards, but
All right.
it's quite an interesting one. For SeedLegals, then obviously this year has been an interesting one, so to speak. Let's put it that way. Like we said, things that are completely unexpected. What sort of things have you learned as a founder of a very public facing company? What have you learned from this situation that has arisen that perhaps you are still going to bring and adopt moving forward?
I think one of the interesting things personally is, I think many founders are, they start off as, maybe they've done an M&A, sort of business background, or maybe they're a tech founder. That's really me. I'm a tech product guy, or maybe they're a doctor or something. But you're all a sort of domain expert. And for the most part, when you build a business, yes, you've got to deal with people, but you can sort of stick in your zone. But then along comes an event like COVID, and suddenly, you have to have some sort of leadership skills. You have to have a say on things that you don't know any more than anyone else. So should the team be back in the office? Should you furlough people? If business is down, what should you do? The good news is we didn't have any bad problems, but, should I push people to be in the office? Should we go completely remote? Nobody knows the answer. So now I think that's kind of interesting when you look within. You could just procrastinate and wait for someone else to have the answer. You could sort of kind of hope that someone else in the team does it. But, if you're the CEO, you're meant to have the answer. The team's looking up to you. So what do you do? And I think that's really interesting because, I mean, how am I meant to know any better than anyone else whether the COVID's going to be up or down or finished in 2 weeks or with us forever? But I can't not have a view on it, and I can't have a view that's obviously just made up and changes by the day. So I think you find that you have to pull out leadership things that you didn't think you had, and you want to lead your team to be happy, productive, safe, inspired. Um, and of course, then modify this as things go along. So in my case, we opened our office, I think, or at least from what I've seen, we've got about 25% of people in the office. I'm using cake to bribe people to be
It's
in.
always the best way, bribery, my world.
Exactly. There's a Paul's downstairs and I come by with cake. No, but I mean, we don't neither force people to be in the office or tell you not to be in the office. So and then it's been interesting to see sort of people sort of trickle back in, and of course people who are closer come in, or people who've got small apartments. I think one thing that I've heard is that managers are happy to say work at home because they've got bigger houses or apartments, and more junior people have got smaller apartments and they're desperate to get out. So what can you do anyway? So that was a bit of a segue, but I think learnings to see how you act when there's a perturbation in the
Yeah.
force.
I think it really puts spotlights on leadership, like you said, and being able to pull things that you either didn't know or didn't expect to use in your leadership skill set, which has been really nice to see how different companies have dealt with the situation. One thing I'm curious about, sort of moving away from 2020, just in general, is that obviously back in 2016 when you launched, there wasn't many services like yours, and now, you know, four years on, there's a couple popping up. We're seeing a few different ones. How do you view that? Do you view that with open arms? Are you like, bring it on, let's have a little bit of competition? Or are you more like, I want to be the top dog, which obviously you are?
It's said if you don't think you've got any competition, you're defining your space too narrowly. But I must say, I'm quite amazed that in the 4 years we've been around, no one is building a sort of legal tech platform like we are.
Mm,
There are always lawyers who are competitors in a sense. There are crowd platforms. There's some people doing secondary markets and cap tables.
yeah.
But I've been quite surprised that there's nothing, there's no other SeedLegals to go and do a funding round and quite a few related things. Um, but of course, you kind of want competition in that you want the industry to recognize and people to recognize that everything has changed. But of course, you don't want too close competition. I think one of the maybe two things. One, what happens when one day you wake up and you've got a significant competitor. And I think number two is when you start a business, you have a disruptive idea. But if you don't keep innovating, one day you're going to figure out that someone's out disrupted
Mm-hmm.
you. So in our business, we don't, for example, do blockchain or smart contracts because I've never yet met somebody who calls me going, my investors are insisting on a blockchain-based smart contract. No, my investors have sent me a term sheet and they want a funding round, please. So my goal is just to give you an easier way of meeting your goals, not redefining particularly your goals, but that obviously won't be forever. And I'd be disappointed if one day, it turns out that someone else has built a business that means the entire thing we've created is now old. It's like
Mm,
I mean, my joke is, the lawyers are like or others are building the better horse and carriage. I've built the car, but maybe someone else will come up then with the self-driving car. So there, I think, is the key challenge, which is, once upon a time, founder has an idea and then goes and builds a business. And you can easily become complacent that you focus on revenue, month on month growth, whatever, but you're optimizing for a local maximum rather than the next thing.
mm,
And I must say that for me is now, I think, the time that, we've done a lot of incremental pieces and, change the way that UK companies raise investment. There's now more raised in rolling close and pre a funding round than in a funding round, which I think is
wow.
amazing. But what's the next step, which is going to be investor matchmaking, maybe secondary markets, and a range of things. And I think the big challenge, and then I'll get back to you on that, is when you started the business, you probably found a pain point that people were looking to solve, and you looked to solve that. Later on, you have to be careful not to get ahead of yourself and start going, oh, we can build all this cool
Yeah.
stuff. But it turns out that nobody wants it. And then you find yourself like with a huge team and a huge burn rate, and you've sort of outgrown your usefulness, so to speak. And so to find the right balance between building shit that no one wants and not building stuff and being out disrupted by somebody new is your challenge, in the next stages.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. We've both seen, I'm sure, that there are companies that have done the latter where they've tried to almost be the answer for everything in their little niche or their industry, and it kind of bites them in the behind after a time. The disruption
Right.
side of things, I'm super interested in. How do you, as a founder, make sure that you are in that space where you're looking for that self-driving aspect of the car? You're not getting too lost on the what are our wheels looking like, what's the steering wheel looking like. You're always making sure that you're that one step ahead.
I might be a bad example of answering that, because I think historically I'm super focused on customer driven development and awesome customer service and so on, and as a result I might be focused personally too much on the here and now, not on the big picture, just because you end up spending all your time on that. And so how can I force myself to, delegate more, to be able to look at the big picture with my business partner and so on? I must say my business partner, maybe that's the perfect solution, because he complements me perfectly in that I'm very transactional, he's very strategic and big picture. And maybe that's a key, good partnership, that you playing both sides. If someone's just playing strategic, you might be forever trying to build stuff that's 2 steps ahead. And if you're just looking the here and now, you might be polishing the stone perfectly, and then one day you wake up and like everyone's moved somewhere else. Obviously I don't know the answer, but I think the time has come in our business that I think, by the way, here's one useful thing for anyone watching, which is something I heard a while back, which is a company, you can think of it as 2 parts, a startup and a business. So when you begin your enterprise, you're just a startup. A startup is all about finding product market fit, experimenting, building stuff. You don't know if people really want it. And a business is when you know exactly what your cost of goods sold is, you know what your custom acquisition cost is, how long it takes your team to service a particular thing, your revenue on it. And this is sort of business as usual. And this is where you go raising Series A, because you are now going to spend a lot on marketing, sales, and so on, because you've got something that people want, and you make more out of a customer than it costs you to acquire a customer. The startup, on the other hand, is where getting angel investment. No one knows it's going to work. But if you can continue to think about your business as it grows in these 2 sections, then on the one hand, you maybe, add people in your team, who are skilled at their area, marketing, sales, ops, whatever it might be, to grow the business side, while you keep in your mind creating more startups within the business. And now, by focusing on both sort of suitably, you're not going to put all your eggs into the startup basket. Otherwise, you'll just lose sight of the fact that something has to pay everyone's wages. But if you don't have any startup in your business, then one day you just find that you haven't got any innovation, and then maybe you have to acquire other companies, or you get acquired, or whatever it might be. But if you keep firmly in mind these 2 ways that you operate, and I think that in our business, that I, for my part, can look to hand over perhaps some more on the operational side, on the business piece, and have fun playing on the startup piece. That's super important for the next step as well.
Yeah, and that shows the power of delegation, knowing your value, knowing your strengths, knowing your weaknesses. I think this is a common theme that comes up in a lot of these talks, that having that support network around you as a founder actually allows you to focus on your strengths and to focus on what that business needs, rather than trying to spin all the plates, and inevitably some are going to get broken, which is really ideal. One thing I want to talk about, sort of coming to the end of this conversation, but the future of SeedLegals. What have you got? What's next for you? What's next for your growth plans? I know that you've got a couple of things in the pipeline and launching soon.
Great question. Obviously, some things I can talk
Big
about and some not. But I think when we started, it was all about UK. It was all about startups. It was all about early stage. Why? Well, because we're in UK, we're in London. Startups, early stage, are the fastest adopters. Founders are just used to doing things in a new way. I mean, their entire business is disrupting old things. So that was the natural starting point. But that was just the beginning. Our goal has always been, sort of concentric circles. So the first thing was, not just startups, so later stage rounds. And as companies have grown with us, our round size has been increasing step by step. Number two, not just the UK. So, TransferWise gives you borderless banking. Imagine borderless legals. Right now you'd never, if you're a UK investor, invest in a French company. You've no idea how it works legally. You don't even understand all the docs. I mean, it's a crazy thing. So we've cracked, largely my business partners cracked the French legal system over about 6 months of insane amount of work, and we've built that on SeedLegals. And now, whether it's a UK or French or an Irish round and soon others, you see your standard deal terms normalized across all jurisdictions, but then it'll build the docs appropriately. So I think that's going to be a game changer. The next thing is that when we started, it was all about startups. But actually, that's just the inner circle. So there are about 15,000 early stage growth startups, new ones each year in the UK, about 50,000 SMEs, about 200,000 more sort of steady state companies, and millions of just company house companies. So our goal is to expand our offering into companies that fall outside of the I'm just raising investment. And you'll see a lot more there. But the short answer is, we want to be the operating system of your company, a platform that you can build your business on. And I think one more point, which is we started off really being about the founders and a solution to their problems, but actually we're now moving to phase two, which is all about the investors as well. So we've just launched Deal Manager for investors. So it's the fastest way to send out your term sheet and see all your deals in one place. And by having both parts of the market, we want to dramatically reduce the friction. You're not a crowd platform, not doing matchmaking, but tools for both sides of the market that then, of course, in due course, may well lead to the next things which you might surmise on.
I love that. And that growth plan and what you guys have got in store just sounds incredibly exciting. And I'm sure from where you sit, and if you look back at the last 4 years, I have no doubt that you must be incredibly proud of what you've built and your co-founders built.
I'm very pleased. I'm most pleased at my team and colleagues, particularly now operating remotely, and totally delighted to be able to be part of what we've built. And I think not everyone in the world's having a great time, but it's very nice to be able to offer an environment and be part of an environment. I think particularly in our case, working with startups, you talk to an never-ending stream of bright founders who are looking to change the world, and that's really, really satisfying.
Yeah, I imagine the conversations and what you see is a very interesting point of view in terms of just the founder space as a whole. But Anthony, listen, I really value your time. So I guess my final question is, if anyone hasn't heard of SeedLegals or doesn't know what it is, how can they find out more about it and get in touch with them?
Yeah, so seedlegals.com, head over there. If you're looking for any deal data, advice, and so on, seedlegals.com, resources, deal data. I've got a new series called Pitch Deck Clinic. So there are endless numbers of articles on, how to create the pitch deck. Here's the pitch deck that Uber used to raise billion. They're completely useless. There's only one graph in those pitch decks that's important, which is the revenue one. They can say yada, yada, yada on all the other pages. Those things aren't useful. So Pitch Deck Clinic is I get on a call with the founder and over 45 minutes pick apart gently their pitch deck so that you can see in practical examples. So Pitch Deck Clinic you'll find in Resources Investor Hub. And then if you want to chat with me, Anthony at seedlegals.com, or just hit the web chat bubble. And my goal is, less than a median 5-minute response time for anything you want. So
that's an
yeah.
incredible goal and very good on you, Anthony. Listen, thank you so much for your time. Congratulations on the success of SeedLegals, and I very much look forward to see that growth you mentioned and see what else you've got in store.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me on the show.
Thank you, and thanks everyone for listening and watching. This has been Founders 365.